You guys want to see my video?
Okay, so it occurred to me that maybe I should film how I actually plant trees on a slope in the cross timbers. So if you take a look here, you can see things like this. If you can see that on camera, this is what I have for soil. Okay, if you want to call it that. So a lot of what I dig out is mostly rock, and this stuff is actually the actual dirt is actually pretty good. It's not bad actually, but it's so mixed in with the rocks that it's better to just dig it out of there. And on a slope, this is the structure that I use to make sure that the trees get water. So I dig a small, I guess you could call it like a mini swale, in front of the tree, exactly where the slope comes in, and it needs to be level just like you would do a swale. And then in the back, I build a berm to catch any water that overflows out of the swale. So then you have water coming into the ground here in the front of the tree, and then if it overflows, which it eventually will, it will actually get stopped by the berm, which is taller, and go in behind the tree. This is how I make the most out of the water that I capture. Now you can dig swales, a full swale throughout your yard on the contour line, but if you ain't got time, or if you maybe you're going to do a swale later and you're trying to get trees in the ground, like in my situation, you can actually get started this way and then come in later and expand the swales that you have. So the last thing I'll point out is that a lot of the literature will say you want to plant in the native soil, and that is true if you can. But if your native soil is pure rock, you're going to have to dig a hole and replace it with some other soil. Now I've got some leftover compost that I made, and I've mentioned that I dig soil out of my pond bed. Well, not my pond bed, but out of my pond that I'm hand digging. It's a slow progress, but every time I dig in it to rob it for soil, it makes the pond deeper. And I actually do backfill the soil with a mix of native soil and compost. And that tends to do pretty good, because the soil that I have here, it's really hard to get it hydrated. Once it gets water, it doesn't drain very well. And like this type of tree is an American plum, it actually wants a more well-drained soil because it's not native to the cross timbers. So that the guidance of, you know, always use native soil and don't backfill it with a lot of different soil is kind of, it's just that, it's guidance. It's not always a hard and fast rule. So I think that covers most of how I do trees. Like the whole yard is on a slope. So this structure that I pointed out here, a lot of times they'll say dig a ring like this on the drip line. And that's great if your ground is mostly level. But if it's not, I find that this works better in making sure that the tree stays hydrated. All right, I just want to show you how this little structure works. I'm going to take a look here. I've actually taken a mix of my compost and native soil and mixed it in to fill this thing. And before I completely fill it up, I water it, because we're already starting to have some real dry conditions this early. So I know you can see here the little mini swale that I built in the front. Nice and level. And then that's going to soak in and go in here. And then when I fill this up, that berm in the back stops it. What I want to draw your attention to, of course, after I'm done planting, I mulch it. And I start with mulching the berm because I don't want it to erode. So keep your berm mulched and it pretty much won't erode away. But what I want to draw your attention to is, I've made this comment in some of my past videos, but planting in a raised bed in the cross timbers, I mean, they'll grow well, but you're going to use more water. And when you're doing permaculture, it's all about, well, I mean, not all about, but one of the main important things is to control your resource usage. So what I advise is to plant in a depression. Now take a look here. You can see it's probably about an inch or two below the surface of the ground, okay? So this is something that I do for all of my trees. I plant them slightly below the level of the ground. See, this is where the level of the ground comes, and this is where the tree's roots start, about a couple inches below. It's just yet another way to make sure that when it does rain, as much rain as possible lands in the tree's roots. This is the end product. Looks pretty, doesn't it? One thing I'll mention, it should go without saying, is that your berm back here, I always do pack it down pretty good. I pack it down with my hands as I'm building it, and then after I put the wood chips on it, I usually go on with my foot and give it a nice packing. Also, notice how there's wood chips here in the little mini swale. That's fine. The water will still go in there, and it will still drain into the ground and still get caught So, and it's going to happen anyway because it's on a slope, so sediment and everything will wash into that mini swale. And by the time that happens, hopefully the tree will be well established, the roots are very deep, and it won't really matter.
This is pretty much the worst video ever made.